Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you to the not superheroes of today to talk about building resilience, which is our theme today, and from many different perspectives, from being the patient to caring for the patient to losing the patient and the experience that that has. And I think you're going to find some parallels, and then you're going to find some things that resonate with you, hopefully, because we've got a lot of different lenses up here that you can peer through. All right, we're just going to roll. So this is a hard question. When I wrote it, I thought it'd be an easy question, but then after everything we've done here, to start, when you think about your journey with heterotaxy in whatever form that is, how would you define resilience?
This may sound on the surface very kind of, I get all sorts of reactions to this, but I joked and I said I felt like my resilience model was the cockroach. And really, this is because nobody likes cockroaches. There aren't signs around. When you ask kids, what kind of animal would you like to be? They're not like, I want to be a cockroach. But when you think about them, cockroaches were around 150 million years before the dinosaurs. They have been around for 300 million years. And they are still here because they have adapted to every circumstance, to everything that's been thrown on them. They've become pesticide resistant. You can chop off their head and they can still live for weeks. Cockroaches have kind of figured out this really kind of not pretty, not glamorous way of enduring, of adapting. And I think that kind of reflects how I feel about resilience, because resilience is not, to me, this kind of toxic positivity, everything is great and I've just managed to adapt to this terrible situation and make sunshine and rainbows. Sometimes it's ugly and it's messy and it feels ugly and you don't want to be doing it. You do not want to be the cockroach. You very much wish you could be the unicorn or the whale, living a much nicer life. And yet, it is that ability to still be able to make mistakes, to have a bad day, but then continue to endure, to say, tomorrow is a new day and I can try again. Or this is really hard and I don't actually know how I'm going to get through it, but I don't have to know how I'm going to get through it. I just need to show up. I just need to show up today, this afternoon, the next hour, tomorrow, and tomorrow. And then, like the cockroaches, that's my joke. I'm still here, aren't I? So one way or another, ugly or pretty, I'm going to figure that out.
Yeah, I agree with that. I kind of laughed about being on a resilience panel. I don't feel resilient right now. I don't feel like the majestic unicorn that's, the poster child of whatever we're supposed to be. But I think the point is that I'm still here and I'm still up here to talk to you guys, even though it is hard, and I am still putting one foot in front of the other. And I think that's all any of us can really do and ask for.
Yeah, I don't want to say I'm the quintessential engineer. I think I'm not the best engineer in the world, but I think my mindset is very much about engineering, which is all about solving problems. So if we had a problem, like James kind of illustrated in his talk, I felt like I had to find the solution. So if that required, reading medical journals until you found it, then that's what I did. Or finding the right feeding therapist for Nadav because he wasn't eating, then I would just do it and then make him get there. So it's a crazy story where I was taking this kid with an oxygen tank on the subway system in New York, and people were looking at me like I was crazy, and I guess I was. I shouldn't have done that. Then we ended up taking taxis. I was like, bite the bullet, spend the money. But whatever required getting done, just getting it done. And that was like a motto. Like we said that with our kids, like just get her done. So to me, I guess, resilience is just keeping on, and finding a way to solve it, and just keep on doing it every day, today, tomorrow, whatever it is, do it.
Yeah, I agree with everything you guys have said. I love the cockroach metaphor. I'm very much an unwilling cockroach over here. But yeah, resiliency is tough. I have like a love-hate relationship when people say, "Oh, you're so strong," because I'm like, I didn't ask for this. I don't want to be strong. Most of the time, I feel weak. I feel extremely weak. But I think resiliency is knowing that you will feel strong again, and it's pushing forward despite feeling like you're not strong at all. Yeah.
Thank you. The next question is, can you share a moment early in your journey? It doesn't have to be early in your journey, anywhere in your journey, right? Maybe a challenge or a turning point that shaped how you began building resilience.
I'd say for me, it was pretty early on. It was the very first time Serafina did a prolonged hospitalization. It was unexpected. She was in for 3 or 4 months. And I think that kind of became the shift, because in the beginning, she had done many previous hospitalizations to that. And it was this idea that, you could freeze the rest of your life to do the hospital, right? Everything else in our life sort of got put on the back burner. You froze it all, just kind of sitting there in suspended animation. And then you were going to do your hospital thing, and then the hospital thing would be over, and then you would get back to your real life. And I think it was during that hospitalization, resilience for me really started to become about how you live life with understanding that the hospital was going to be a part of your life. And how did you do that? How do you make living in the hospital just be a part of who you are as a family, protecting your child's own emotional resiliency, protecting your resiliency and that of the rest of your family? And that really shifted to me to make sure that I didn't separate that out into something separate, but that it became integrated in our entire lifelong experience.
I think a lot of you kind of know our backstory, but Avery and her sister Kylie are twins, and Avery was born with heterotaxy syndrome, and so we did a pretty typical, we spent 80 days in the NICU, sort of par for the course for some of our kiddos. And then she came home and she did wonderfully. She was meeting all of her milestones. She was developmentally beating her twin on a lot of milestones. And then when she was 2.5, she had her Fontan. She had a post-op arrest, catastrophic brain bleed. So what we brought an able-bodied child into the hospital, and when we eventually did get out, had a very, very different situation, a very different sort of prognosis, path ahead of us. And I think the big take home from that was that she wasn't supposed to live through any of that. They told us she wasn't going to. We pulled in all of our family, and she just defied all odds and was so resilient that the rest of us had no excuse to do anything but just support her and try to be resilient along with her.
I wanted to say originally the turning point was, I guess the first hospital stay, but I'm not sure that's correct now after listening to you. Maybe in our journey, the turning point was actually after Nadav died. I feel like the journey during was always something that we could get through. We never were really blindsided in a way that you were. We saw kids in the hospital that were like that, and I thought to myself, there's no way I could be in that position. It's just, I was always afraid of the neurological issues. I just thought I would fall apart in that situation, and thankfully we never got there. But for us, it was burying our son, and I remember saying something dumb at the memorial service, that we're going to get through this as a family or something silly like that. But really the hard work came, in the years following, where our family was very much pulled apart, and it was very, very difficult, and it required a lot of work to figure out how to move forward and get through it in a way that was very different from what, dealing with hospital stuff, like almost put hospital stuff to shame. So I guess that was sort of the challenge in our life about being resilient. And I guess, we're far enough out from it now that I'm able to be here and talking about it, which is great. For me is a big deal. In the outside world, I'm not very open about this, which is also a bit strange. But I'm getting a bit better. Somebody asked me what I was doing this weekend when I was working here in Boston at our office, and I said, I'm going to a medical conference. And I started talking about my kid. And they just said, then they looked at me and they're like, yeah, I know, because James puts things on LinkedIn and I link to them. So people do know, but they don't talk to me, so I don't know that they know, which has been the story since Nadav died, because I'm not very forthright. But yeah, so that's the thing. Since Nadav died, that's the path for us.
So I feel like I'm early on in my resiliency, journey, especially compared to parents and stuff. But I think for me, I didn't really feel resilient until after my Fontaine revision when I was 18. Because before then it wasn't really something that I don't know, I remembered or really talked about much unless, I had a doctor's appointment. But after my Fontaine revision, it was something that people asked about. They saw my scar and would be like, oh, like, what is that from? And I would be like, oh, like, I had open heart surgery. And people would be amazed. People would be like, oh, my God, really? So it made me feel like it was something to be proud of, something that I went through that I came out the other side of. And I was like, oh, okay, like, yeah, I did that, and I'm okay. So I think that's where I really started feeling resilient. And, when other issues came up along after that in my 20s, I was like, I've been through heart surgery. This is nothing, So I kind of gained that confidence to go through other issues after that.
Awesome. Okay. Our next question is, living with heterotaxy can be unpredictable. So what is something that helps you stay grounded when things change suddenly or don't go as planned?
So there's a really great quote. It comes from the Lord of the Rings, right? And Frodo is sitting there and he says, I wish this need not have happened in my time. And Gandalf responds, so do I, and so do most people who live to see such times. But it is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us. And I think, Serafina had a very, very, very complex course. She would spend well over half of a year in the hospital every year, over and over again, and she had so many complications they didn't know what to do with. And I think in the beginning I was very focused on, surely there must be a solution for this. If going back to you, Talia, talking about being a problem solver, being very much that type of person, There has got to be a solution to this problem. We should understand this problem and be able to fix this problem. And really, I think that was trying to create a control that gradually over time, what I needed to shift my focus from was from the things that I could not control. I couldn't control if she was going to end up in the hospital. I couldn't control if she was going to have this particular complication. I couldn't control some of the stuff that happened, and also some of the stuff, right? Like, we're at this conference because heterotaxy care is still in some ways in its infancy. And there were just things that they didn't know. They didn't know how to fix. And I had to accept that sometimes it was okay not to know. And it was okay to accept that there might not be an answer to what I wanted, and to be able to shift that over to what can I do with what I have. And that very much shifted gradually to looking at my daughter and rather asking, can we fix all these problems, but to say, how is she doing today? Is today a good day? Is she happy? What can we do today? And it really, I had to sort of block out into different places and compartmentalize, so that I wasn't missing the joy that was in front of my face in the here and now, because I was letting all the space be taken up about the things that could happen, that might happen, that were kind of hovering like a cloud. I really needed to push that away and let the joy and the experience of being her mother. So I guess I would say what grounded me in there was really a grounding into the present moment. And when those present moments were bad, was to accept that that could change, right? Like, and really understand something that feels bad or is bad right now doesn't have to be forever. And then also on the converse, to really hold on to those joyous moments, understanding also that those might not last, that those were not permanent either. And so the importance in those moments when you are having joy was to really be mindful about being in that joy.
I think for me, one thing that really grounds me is my other kids. There's never really the opportunity to sort of just sit and wallow in what's going on with Avery or what has happened with Avery, because there's 4 other little people that also need me, and need me to keep being their mom, even when it's very challenging and very hard. And I think it's been really good for me to have a big family and have the other kids that sort of keep our life semi-normal, because things have got to keep going, and we gotta keep up and wake up every morning and take care of them too. So I think that's really grounding for me personally.
It's grounding for us too. And also, I feel like when we were in the thick of it, there was a time where we were sort of in the clear, and so we really spent a lot of time just being happy and doing fun stuff and doing as much sort of quote unquote normal things, and just enjoying life, right? That's why we're on this earth. As my older son says, we're all going to die at some point, so may as well make the best of it. But I think the thing that has always, we had this horrible in our story where we went on a trip and we came back. We went out one way and came back another way, as an able-bodied person walking in, and came back in a different way. But the mantra that I always kept in my head was, you make the best decision that you can based on the information that you have at the time. And you don't really know any other path, right? So you shouldn't really second guess it, because you don't know which way it could have gone, because you don't know. It's not like a choose your own adventure book where you can go back and read it and then something else happens and you made the wrong decision. No, you just do the best you can with the decision that you have to make at that time. So I keep that. I still think of that. And James and I try not to talk about it anymore. And don't use the word medical regret. That's another good suggestion.
I think what grounds me, which has taken me a long time to learn, is really giving myself time to do the things that I enjoy, and setting aside even a whole day. I'll put it on my phone calendar and say, this is my rest day. So whatever, I'm not going to make plans with friends. I'm not going to go out and do anything. If I want to paint, I'll paint. If I want to do some yoga, I'll do that. Whatever I need, that's the time that is for me. Even if it's like going to a cafe and getting like a matcha latte or getting like bubble tea, something that makes me happy and brings me joy. I'm like, I need this. This is very important, and I think just as important as taking your meds, talking to your therapist, stuff like that is really making sure that you are finding time to rest and enjoy your life, because that's why you're here. So
I think teacher Amy would give them all an A for those answers. I just love how you embrace whatever it is, whatever that feeling is, right? Because the sunshine and rainbows wouldn't look so beautiful if that's all we had. I'm going to, I'm going to skip some questions, and so I apologize if you kind of had like a hierarchy of answers. So I want to use the term, so those of you who haven't been in Heterotaxy Connection for very long, 1 year our theme was #BecauseHeterotaxy. And a lot of you can understand that things happen because heterotaxy. And it kind of puts you in this trial and error mode. And so it's like you feel like a newbie every day. And so when you hear trial and error, can you think of a moment where, something that just sticks in your memory bank related to heterotaxy that you could share with us?
Oh gosh. We don't have all day for me to sit here and talk. So Serafina was extraordinarily complicated. She actually had another rare condition called holoprosencephaly, which I will not make you all repeat 5 times. But basically, it interacted with her heterotaxy in a way that really she was an N of 1. Like there has ever, to our knowledge, been another patient with both of these conditions at once. There was a time in which her particular fluid balance, it made her fluid balance extraordinarily difficult to manage. And she almost died multiple times from a derangement of her electrolytes. And so they wanted to offer this experimental medication to potentially help, but it could also kill her. And we actually had to go before an ethics committee and make a decision on whether or not we were going to utilize this treatment. She would have been the only child in Boston Children's Hospital on it. So they had a whole ethics committee review just to decide whether or not they felt it was ethical to offer her this treatment. And then after they decided in the ethics committee that, yes, they were going to proffer this treatment, it would come with the risk of death. There was all sorts of other things that potentially could happen because they didn't know how she was going to react to the drug because they hadn't used it in children like her. So in that moment, Thomas and I needed to make a decision. And I remember saying, and I think Jenna and I were talking about this earlier, it was like, because she was spending so much, she was living in the hospital. And this would be our potential chance to leave. And I just remember saying, we have spent so much time and so much care trying to keep her alive. Why? What is being alive for if you don't actually get to have a life worth living? I need my daughter to be able to eat dirt in our background playground. I need her to be able to swing on a swing. I need her to have the experience of going to a grocery store. And that really was my centering focus. It really clarified for me all of the values that we were bringing into her care, and it distilled us down to a very clear why. So we went forward with the experimental medication. It did work in that case, and she went home. But no matter what, I felt it was worth the risk, mainly because I think what's helpful in those decisions and when you're doing your trial and error, if I were to give advice, it would be that. What are your values? What are your goals of care for your kids? What is your why that's driving the care that you're providing? And let that help you provide answers when you're in uncharted territory where nobody can give you comfort in numbers and how that's going to go.
When Avery had her brain injury, and she was on ECMO, I think, for 8 days, and she started to kind of show that she was going to maybe have some hope for a future, they wanted to put her straight to a trach because she was intubated at that time. They said, there's no way she's going to ever be able to breathe on her own. Like, let's not put her through the stress of extubating and then having to rush her for a trach. And Spencer and I were both like, you know, she hasn't really done anything the way that you have said that she's going to do these things because heterotaxy. We need you to give her a chance. And she's not on a trach. She was extubated. So I think, you know, just speaking to, like, there is a lot of trial and error, but there's also a lot of knowing your kids and advocating for your kids. And it's sometimes going to be the more inconvenient choice for the hospital because they would have had to, like, rush her and do something really urgently that they didn't want to do. But she probably then would have been on a trach for the rest of her life. And, you know, sometimes you just have to say, like, heterotaxy is its own whole thing, and you just have to listen and advocate for your own kids sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, we had sort of two trial and error, well, we had many trial and error moments, but I'm thinking of two, and one was a good thing, and the second one was not. So I guess the moral of the story is you never know. But there are, so in our experience, I wanted to talk a little bit about lymphatics because you raised it earlier, and I know there's some questions, and we didn't talk about it in the medical section at all. Which is interesting. It just points to, you know, that there's the understanding of heterotaxy is sort of, you know, at an early stage. And I know, you know, we were in discussions with Boston for this conference, but there are other centers that are a bit further ahead with lymphatic programs like Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. And that was one of the things that Nadav was struggling with when we flew back from Australia, and he was leaking 9 liters through his chest drain, that the lymphatic imaging was able to identify where there were leaks into the system that were then going into his lungs that was then draining out of his into his chest drains. So the trial and error was understanding that whole system and what the effect was on his body and what needed to be done. I'm going to plug the lymphatics program that I was telling Alicia and anyone else who ends up in this situation. It's mostly for the kids who are cardiac focused and who have issues with protein losing enteropathy, and which leads then to plastic bronchitis. Someone did mention plastic bronchitis, but didn't really talk about lymphatics. But that's the solution in there lurking. And we had Dr. Yoav Dori and at the time Maxime Itkin, who's now at Nemours, who's an interventional radiologist who was helping to map the lymphatic system and identify which vessels then needed to be clogged with surgical glue. So it's kind of like, sometimes I think of this as like Legos and, you know, kids playing in the next room over. That's what we're doing with our kids' bodies. It's really trial and error, even from the medical side. But it worked. They plugged his hole. He was finally able to get home after leaking for 9 months, 3 months in Australia and 6 months in Philadelphia. So that was a positive story. And then just because of his course, his blood flow was retrograde. He was growing collaterals everywhere in his body, and he was completely off the map, the medical map, and no one had any solutions. And we had access to our fourth hospital, which was Columbia, Morgan Stanley Children's, and there was one interventional cardiologist there who thought he had some solutions on the trial and error front, and we understood we should have had an ethics committee meeting on this, but we understood that we were putting him in the hands of somebody who was, this was a life or death kind of thing. It could have gone either way. But he thought he was able to coil off the right collaterals in the right order to then urge the right blood flow to maybe make a sustainable circulation. And it was back to the same sort of value system that you're talking about, right? What sort of life do you want to try to achieve, and how far are you willing to go? Do you go for something that's potentially novel, understanding that it may not work? And we thought it was worthwhile and did it. And the coiling happened in December, and then I think maybe 4 weeks later he died. So it didn't work. But there was something there. And this is sort of, I don't know if anyone heard me, I was kind of questioning Dr. Hoganson about I'm really interested in the modeling, the CFD modeling. And I wanted to know where it fell over. And, it's nice to show a clean circulatory system with defined vessels. And you know what's happening with your pressures and flows and your hemodynamics. But when things go wonky, to use Lauren's term, then, I'm sure CFD is not the solution. So it's more like feel. And one interventional cardiologist thought that maybe if I just coil off this one, it'll work. So trial and error, sometimes it works.
It's really intimidating going after you.
We're going to start with you on the next one.
Okay. Yeah, I think my mom can probably speak better to the trial and error stuff, because I think there was a lot of that when I was a baby that I don't remember. But there is one story that she tells me a lot about when they found out that I had malrotated intestines because of the heterotaxia. I must have been 1 or 2, maybe around that age. And my mom was noticing that I was spitting up more than she thought was normal. She was like, it just seems like everything I give her just comes right back up, like she's not actually digesting anything. And, primary care doctors, I don't really know a whole lot. We're kind of just like, oh, that's normal. Like, baby spit up. Like, and my mom was like, no, I know my kid, this is not normal. So I have it to this day. My parents got a journal and started measuring, like in milliliters, how much they were feeding me and how much I was spitting up. And for every day would track what I was eating, what I was spitting up, and brought it to my doctors and was like, can you look at this? Because I don't think this is normal. And they're like, oh, that's not normal. And I ended up getting the diagnosis of malrotated intestines and had the surgery to untwist them. So I think, definitely, listening to your kid's body and paying attention, because doctors obviously know a lot. They've been to school for a long time, but parents know their kids. And they talk with other moms, and they share experiences. They are the expert on their kid. So I think with my mom, the trial and error a lot of the times was advocating for me and being like, I know that you think this is normal, but I know that this is not. And maybe we need to look into this. And I think that's huge when it comes to any sort of, cardiac related heterotaxy. I think that communication between the knowledge of the doctors and the knowledge of the parents is really important, and to listen to each other and learn. So, yeah.
Hold on to that microphone.
Oh, okay.
We're doing reverse flow now.
Okay.
Okay. Do we have time for 2 more questions? Okay. All right. 1 minute timer. No. This one, and this goes right along with everything we've been talking about today, especially, but the whole conference is: how has connecting with other heterotaxi families, warriors, or caregivers supported your resilience?
So, I think I might have mentioned this before, but I haven't really talked with heterotaxy families very much. I went to a summer camp for kids with congenital heart defects. So I did get a chance to hang out with other kids who had congenital heart defects growing up, and being able to share that experience and feel a little bit more normal with, I have to take meds, I have to take breaks, I think was huge for me. I loved going to that summer camp. And I was a very shy kid. I really didn't talk to many people. I had a very small friend group, but at camp I had a big friend group. So that experience was amazing for me, and I've really wanted to continue that. So I went to the camp for as long as I could. I think I was like 15 when I stopped going, and it was like a cutoff. And then recently, about a year ago, I found out about an adult retreat for congenital heart adults. So we went to this Buddhist themed resort retreat center. And there were like yoga classes and stuff, and it was a small group. There was only about 5 of us, but connecting as adults, and having the knowledge and the the verbiage to talk about what we had been through with each other, and having that understanding of, yes, you get it, was also huge. I now have 2 new friends that are close by in Massachusetts that I talk with regularly about, what's going on with me. And they're like, oh yeah, I that happens to me too. So having that support has been huge. It's been really awesome. Obviously, I think in one of the presentations, it was like, it doesn't make the burden lighter, but it's better. It's a little better talking about it with other people.
I'll be quick. This is new to us. It's great to be here. Thanks, I guess, to Monica for finding James at the other conference and bringing us into this world. We didn't have it before, and I don't think you guys were around when we were diagnosed, so I feel a little bit better that I didn't find you at the time. But we've always had somebody from our hospital that they hooked us up with, so we've had at least one family, and then we met another family in the NICU. And then when we were stuck in Australia, we met 2 other families. So we've always had like a little mini community, not exactly heterotaxy, but people who got it. So that's always helped to have somebody around. And especially the one family from the NICU, we've kind of had like family therapy sessions where we just get together, eat steak, drink red wine, and cry. And that's really great.
I guess we were sort of lucky enough to sort of stumble onto finding some of you guys early on in the journey. It really has made such a huge difference to me, and I'm not going to. But, when Avery was in the hospital, Allie, who I'd never met in person, showed up in Philadelphia to bring us things for my children, because we're going to be living out of a hospital in Philadelphia for some unknown amount of time, when we had come from Durham. Another woman that a lot of us know, Amber, had recently lost her own son, Noah, and came and sat with me at the hospital. And I just see the connections that have formed and strengthened and grown over time. We've gotten to know each other online, and it's just so nice to really have this connection in person too.
Yeah, I feel similarly. I'd certainly gotten connected with some of the heterotaxy community very early on. Jenna just mentioned Amber, and Amber's son and Serafina, Noah and Serafina, were in the hospital for at the same hospital, spent months and months and months, and I walked with Amber as Noah passed away, and was there for that. And then she, in turn, came up, even though she lives in Pennsylvania, when Serafina passed away, And just, she was at her funeral. We continued to keep in touch. And I would just say how I liken the heterotaxy community, particularly in those real moments of crisis, it's like you're sitting in this flimsy little life raft in the middle of the ocean, in the middle of a hurricane, and you're hanging on for dear life. And it's just really nice to turn around and there's somebody else in the life raft with you. And it doesn't mean everything's going great for you. Like at one point, Amber and I would joke, Serafina was getting sent to the medicine ICU, Noah was getting sent into the cardiac ICU, everybody's getting bad news, but you didn't have to get that bad news alone. And you didn't have to deal with those most difficult moments by yourself. So it didn't make the hurricane go away, but at least you had another face to look at who understood you, who knew you, who valued your children, who were there to say, whatever you walk through, we are not going to be afraid to do this with you. And I think that's what Heterotaxy Connection has really provided.
I'll take it.
You have your own microphone.
Actually, I feel like that is a great question to end with, because that's what it's all about. It really is what it's all about. And Nisha said it a million times. At the core of everything is to make sure that no family has to do this alone. And not only are we not doing it alone, we're finding people and forcing them into our club against their will, and then convincing them it's the best family on the planet, which it is, right? And so we are so, 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 so grateful that we've been able to come together and share our perspectives and realize we are all experts in this. And it can only get better from here. So thank you all very much.
As this conference comes to a close, I hope that you have been fed. I have watched each of you making connections with other families, with some of the kids, with clinicians, and it's brought tears to my eyes, many times. I hope you carry forward hope, knowing that we have some of the brightest minds out there working on these problems. And yes, we do need to address the lymphatic issue. But I hope more than anything that you all know that you are part of our family now. Whether this is your first time here, whether you've been with us from the very, very beginning, you are part of our family. Please reach out. All of us are more than willing to be there for you, to be that shoulder that you need to lean on in your darkest times. And reach out to those around you, whether that be online in the support group, whether that is, I've already had a couple people talk to me about different events that they want to go to represent us. Help us carry this forward. It's because of you guys that we continue to reach out and be able to reach more and more people. So thank you from the bottom of my heart, and safe travels home, all of you.